Central Texas Life with Ann Harder.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Central Texas Life. And we're going to talk today about foster care. And I have the wonderful Hope Middlebrook with me. And you are with Arrow Child and Family Ministries.
Yes,
Have been
ma'am.
for a couple of years, you say.
Yes.
But your background is in journalism.
Mhm.
And so you're sort of their face, their spokesman. A lovely face, I might say. But
Oh, thank you.
it's such an important topic, and you tell me that there are a lot of changes to the foster care.
Yes, we're lovingly calling it the tsunami that is about to hit.
Really?
Foster care is changing rapidly, and I think it's good changes. I'm
Oh,
very
is it?
excited.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yes. So basically, CPS in the past, Child Protective Services, has been the ones that investigate and remove children, and then oftentimes will license parents to care for those children, foster parents to care for
Right.
those children. CPS is actually phasing out.
Really?
It's unclear exactly what their role is going to be in the future, but at this point, they are no longer licensing foster
And
parents.
that is an operation of the state, right?
Yes,
It's a
ma'am,
state
it is.
governmental.
Yes, so it's going
So
privatized.
non-governmental. is
Yes,
what.
and the CPS does great work. They're wonderful,
And they're
wonderful
overworked,
people,
and they don't
but
have
they're
enough people. And
overworked.
right.
So this is something where private organizations can step in and work alongside the state rather than having it all fall on the government's shoulders. You know, these are private agencies are kind of like boutique CPSs. They're much smaller. They're smaller offices. So the caseloads go from 60 kids a caseworker to something more like 10 kids.
Wow. So you can really follow up.
Yes.
And there was nothing worse for me as a news reporter to have a story about a child or, an abusive situation and nothing was done.
Yes.
And then that child is killed or,
Which does happen.
those horrible stories of neglect and abuse. And, things happen to parents, they can't care for the kids and so forth. So there is a safety net, really, which is what
Yes,
the foster care.
Yes, but the problem is right now here in Waco, we don't have that many foster parents.
Right.
And so I was talking with a policeman recently, and he mentioned that he walked into a CPS conference room and there were just mats on the floor and
Right.
kids just sleeping on the mats. That is unacceptable in our town. That's unacceptable. There are so many people here who have the space, who have the love. It's time for us to step up as a community. Especially my heart is for churches to start having
Absolutely.
more ministries that are reaching for these kids.
Well, just this past Sunday, the minister was talking about foster care, which was kind of interesting. And I'm not going to retell it as beautifully as she did, but talking about, the foster parents, you don't know if you're going to have this child for 6 months, 6 weeks,
Yes.
6 years. You don't know. And someone was asking a foster parent who decided to do it after her kids were out of the nest.
Yep.
And they were still active and wanted to give back. And they said, but how can you do this? Doesn't your heart break when you have to give the child back? And she said, of course.
Yes.
My heart breaks. But and it does every time.
Yes.
But she said, is that enough of a reason not to give a child who needs this protection and care that I can give for however long? And I thought it was just such a beautiful description of foster care.
Right now, there's kind of a slogan going around in the foster care world, which is get too attached and let your heart break. I'm a Christian, and I don't believe God has called us to an easy life where we're trying to protect our feelings from getting hurt. These kids, God is more concerned about them being in healthy, happy, loving families than about my feelings maybe getting hurt once a child is reunified with their biological
Hopefully.
family.
Yeah.
Yes. And so
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, though, I hear this all the time. As a recruiter, people say this all the time. I'm just so worried. I'm going to feel sad when the child is reunified. And
Well, you
that
will.
is the biggest green flag to me, because that means
Yeah.
you're going to be willing to invest your emotion. I want you to feel so connected to this child and for you to treat them like your own, because some of these kids, I've never had anyone
Right.
pouring into them.
Right.
So you will get attached and it will hurt, but it's like the pain after doing a really good workout. You're really proud of yourself and it just makes you
Yeah.
want to work out again later, you know?
Yeah. See,
So
like childbirth, you forget the pain.
yes, yes,
And you
yes.
go ahead and do it again.
Yes, absolutely. So that is something I'm trying to even educate people about.
Right.
But there's a lot of children in Waco, and the truth is, it's about to get more because of the privatization of foster care. That's what's happening. So the state is stepping back and it's going private. Now, what happens with that is it's an SSCC takes over. I'm going to try to make this as concise and sparks notes as possible. But
Yeah.
an SSCC,
Do I need to take notes on this?
I've tried to think through how to explain it as it's so complicated. Even I sometimes am like, am I understanding this correctly? But that's a single source continuum contractor.
Okay.
Basically, a private agency, someone like Arrow or another agency. It won't be Arrow in this region. We've already covered as many regions as we're able to. But a private agency will be stepping in kind of as the CPS in the region. So they're
sort of a clearinghouse in a way.
And they're going to be the ones who are calling the other agencies to see if there are beds available, if there are families available. So it's, in my opinion, a really good thing. But when the SSCC takes over, it's all about communities stepping up and caring for the kids that are in their community. So Waco, when there's not enough families for these kids, they're outsourced. They go to Dallas, they go to Austin, they go to Houston. Imagine being ripped away from everything that you know, everything you love, your family, your friends, and now you're also in a new city.
And often there are multiple siblings.
Absolutely.
And it's important for them to stay together.
It absolutely is. And even better if they can stay in their school. If they can stay with their doctor,
if things
their dentist,
can stay
they can see
as
their friends.
normal as possible.
So we also have to have a good number of therapists. We need our community to be equipped to take these kids in, not just families. We need the community stepping up. So that's all what the SSCC is there for. But we're going to be bringing our kids back to Waco, because it's all about bringing the kids back to their community of origin. So that's why there's going to be an influx of kids over the next year or so coming back home.
How many? Do you have an idea?
The number changes so frequently.
Yeah.
It's hard to put a pinpoint on it, but we need a lot of families, is the truth.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this and you're even just like, I am interested in having a conversation about it. Let's meet up. Let's have a coffee. Let's chat about what this would look like. I think oftentimes people get nervous about their biological children. Like, oh, I don't want them to get attached to a new sibling.
Yeah.
I don't
there's a lot to think about.
There is.
But they can understand too. We're doing this to help this child.
Bio kids tend to love foster care more than anyone. And tend to do really well. And it just fosters a love for kids from hard places. I have people calling me who grew up with foster siblings and now they want to foster.
Really?
One of my dear friends, she grew up with foster siblings. Now she works for another agency. A lot of bio kids absolutely love fostering. So that's definitely something to have a conversation about. But the truth is, as this wave is approaching Waco, if there's not places for these kids, the reality is they will be in a hotel room. They will be in a shelter. They will be in a conference room. And that
on a pallet on the floor.
Every child deserves a family.
Yeah.
So
even if it's for a short term.
Yes. And we have wonderful other organizations that are serving, like Isaiah 117 House.
I was going to mention that.
Absolutely.
Which is an actual facility for kids, so they're not on a pallet on the floor somewhere.
Yes. So both Isaiah 117 House and Sparrow's Nest, which is out in Valley Mills, have places for these kids to crash for a few days.
But it's not going to be enough.
It's not. I think sometimes people get really excited, like, oh, well, now there's places for these kids, but it's short term.
Yeah.
So if that's something where you do have a love for what Isaiah 117 House is doing or Sparrow's Nest, maybe it's time to take the next step. And become a more permanent place for this child. But I will say, my little caveat is, when people hear the word foster, typically the word association that comes next is adoption. People think foster and adoption, but really it's foster to reunification. Kids, they statistically do better in their families of origin. So when you're fostering a child, the hope is that they will be reunified with their biological family.
And
That-
if there's issues, substance abuse, sometimes incarceration.
Absolutely.
And then when that can get resolved, hopefully they're on a better path
Absolutely.
and then able to care for their children.
Yes. And then there are kiddos, though, who will not be reunified. And
Yeah, I'm
so these kids are, if you're curious to see them, it will break your heart. It's you can view them on a website called TARE, TARE. And you can just scroll through page after page after page. And typically, I often see every 2 weeks, 50 children are added to the list.
Oh, my goodness.
It takes your breath away. It takes my breath away every time.
Yeah.
And these kids, though, are not babies. These are kids that are oftentimes a little bit older or have medical issues that they need families who can step in. A lot of times parents get nervous about bringing a teenager into their home, but these kids have been waiting for a family for so long. It's really sad to see kids that age out of the system oftentimes end up homeless, incarcerated. Teenagers who are in the foster care system are given a free ride to a Texas university, a state university, and I believe only 3% of them take
advantage of it?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
Because if you don't have the family support, where do you go on the holidays?
Well,
So if anyone, a lot of times families who've already had kids graduate will be a good maybe a good home for these kiddos if your kids are a little bit older. But I know families who have young children who've adopted teenagers, and the families are so healthy. They are so happy. The teenager who's just been adopted is a wonderful big brother, big sister. I see it frequently, and it's something that has just blessed my heart because these are the kids who oftentimes have no one once they turn 18.
Well, I think maybe a concern of somebody considering fostering, because I think I might get a child who really has psychological needs, and am I equipped? How do you prepare families for fostering?
So there are different levels that our kids are at. So if you feel like a basic level child is the right one for you because you don't have a history with kids with special needs, absolutely, just let us know. You feel like a basic level child is right. Moderate level is a little bit higher tier. They're going to be in more therapy. And then there's specialized who kids. These kids need a very special home for them. So we do equip our parents, though, with a thorough training. I'm one of the trainers for it. You spend several hours with us over the course of a month or two learning about how to parent these kids because you do parent them differently than you would your biological children.
I'm sure.
And so we want you to feel so equipped at the time of licensure. There's also ongoing training. The good news is, though, you also will be in such frequent contact with Arrow. I always say that your case manager is kind of like your foster bestie because when you have a child in your home, you have to be very confidential with their information. You can't just call your best friend. No. But you can talk to your Arrow case manager about everything. So you're going to have ongoing support. If you don't know how to handle a situation, we have someone on call 24/7. They can walk you through what to do. And I can tell you, working with this team, this is the best of the best. These women, it's all women right now, are so trained. They are so equipped. They want to advocate for your family. And so there will never be a moment where you have a child in your home and you're like, I have no one. I have no idea what to do. I'm lost. We never want you to feel that way. And thank goodness with our team, you never will.
Yeah. What kind of, I guess, contractually do you have if you get a foster child and it is just absolutely not working out? I mean, it's not like fostering a dog from the animal shelter. I mean, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah, absolutely. That does happen on occasion. The goal, of course, is for a child to have as few placements as possible. So if it's at all possible.
Because continuity is what they don't have in their lives and what they need.
So if it's just like, oh, I don't like this kiddo's personality, we would be like, hey, you did make a commitment to this child. We didn't ask for you to find your dream child. We just need this child to have a bed.
A safe place to be.
But sometimes it's not working and it's hurting the child and it's hurting you and it's just not the right thing. You put in a 30-day discharge notice and we'll look for another home for that child.
I see.
And there can be emergency removals. We never want you to feel unsafe in your home.
Right.
That's very rare.
Yeah.
But
Well, what about, say if you want to travel or whatever, can you take the child out of the community?
that's a great question. And yes, it falls under what we call normalcy. You can even take the child overseas. If you're going on a European vacation, you're going to the Bahamas, we want that kiddo to go with you
Oh,
guys.
how fun is that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I go too?
I'll come along.
That's right. I could be a foster kid.
I sometimes feel that way with our families. I'm like, can you adopt me too? You guys are so great. You do have to get special permission from the judge. The sooner, the better.
Okay.
So if you have to go out of state, maybe you have a funeral in California and you have to go very quickly and you haven't had time to clear it with the courts, the child will go into respite. So they'll stay with either one of our other families or one of our respite providers. Yes, there's never going to be a time where it's like you are strapped to your house and you cannot leave.
Yeah, I wondered about that.
No, ma'am.
I wondered about that. So I want to talk a little bit more about you. How did you get into this area? We talked to you. In fact, you talked about going into broadcast journalism.
Yes.
And the Lord stopped you.
He did. He said no.
And not here. So tell me how you kind of got into this path.
So I have always had a real love for adoption. And it kind of started when I was very young. My mom had planned on adopting a little girl right before she got pregnant with me because she had a dream to have a dark brown-haired, brown-eyed little girl and was in the process of adopting when she got pregnant and capped it with the kids that she had. But that love never left her heart. And so we grew up hearing amazing stories about kids who grew up in even orphanages overseas. And it was one book in particular when I was little called I Love You Like Crazy Cakes. It's about a mama adopting her baby. And I read this book so many times. And as I got older, I was always very fascinated by people who would step into their children's lives without a biological link. I was always fascinated by step parents, by adoptive parents. I always thought it was really beautiful. And then I planned on becoming an attorney for a little bit and just decided over COVID, I was like, I'm not going to do this. I can't do this. And I decided I wanted to move to Waco. I felt like this was where the Lord was leading me. And I just looked up on a whim foster care jobs.
Really?
And I don't know exactly why. And it was the first time, usually qualifications, you hit maybe 3 out of the 4.
Yeah.
I saw that I had every single qualification that they were asking for. And I was like, okay, I'm going to apply. And I remember telling my mom, I was like, don't talk. Once I had applied, I was like, don't talk about this job to me because I'm so excited. And if I don't get it, I'm going to be really sad. So let's just not talk about it.
We're not going to talk about it.
So
till it's a done deal.
I decided I was going to move to Waco. 2 weeks later, I had a fully furnished apartment. And then like 4 days after that, I had been hired for the job at Arrow. I applied on a Wednesday, got the job on Thursday. And then moved down right after that. And
from?
Well, I've kind of lived a couple different places. I was born in Dallas. Then I went to school in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I went to Oral Roberts University.
Did you?
I did.
Yeah.
Golden Eagles.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Denver, Colorado. And then I had just briefly been back in Texas for a couple weeks when I decided I was going to move down to Waco. So I was back in Texas after years of not being here. I love Texas. I'm so happy to be home. And I love foster care so much. Now I'm looking at getting my counseling degree to work with kids in the foster care system. It's just the Lord has really used it in my life. My passion has always been for family, for the family unit, and so I feel so
and
lucky.
the family is under such assault in our culture
ma'am.
today.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm sure you see this all the time.
I do. Yes. And coming from a broken family myself, I have such a heart for a healthy family. And I've gotten to see that with so many of our families. I've gotten to see restoration in my own family. And so I want to see that with other families.
Yeah.
And so it's just been a really beautiful thing. I'm so thankful. And Arrow, I mean, there's a reason we have a reputation the way we do because Arrow loves their employees. They love families. They love God. And they just want to see healthy families. So I'm very thankful.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about Arrow Child and Family Ministries. They're based in Spring, Texas, outside of Houston. And so you said they've kind of kept the areas that they're doing. In other words, they kind of don't want to get over their skis on
So we
stuff,
cover basically all of Texas except for like 2 random cities. but we are the SSCC. We'll be the SSCC in 2 different regions. We were actually founded by a foster child.
Is that right?
Yes, we were back in 1993.
Oh,
He grew up in foster care, had a really rough go of it, finally landed in a Christian home.
yeah.
And his mom, his foster mom, would pray over him every night, a Bible verse. She would say, "Children are a gift of the Lord, like arrows in the hands of a warrior."
That's right.
And
That's
so
right. May your quiver be full of
yes,
them.
ma'am. And so he named Arrow after that verse.
That is so sweet. That just
Yes,
gives me chills.
I know.
love it.
I love telling that story.
Yeah.
And so we've been serving in Texas ever since. We also work in Maryland, kind of a random to
Yeah,
the states.
really. Yeah.
But yeah, we're in Texas and Maryland. We've done many things over the years. We've worked in sex trafficking at times,
Hmm.
anti-sex trafficking, of course.
Well, I mean,
Um,
that's another
yes.
really significant area where kids are vulnerable and they're taken advantage of.
Yes.
But then when they are rescued,
Yes.
they've got to go
And we want them
somewhere.
to land in
Yeah.
a healthy foster home.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
gosh, yeah.
yeah.
So there's so much healing that I guess is where my question about,
Mhm.
you just feel like, am I equipped to care
These
for a
kids
child
just
with?
need a home. They
Yeah,
really
they
do.
just respond to love and
They do.
hugs and touch and
There are times where it'll be hard. There are some kids that are harder than others, but
yeah.
we believe that God equips.
Mhm.
We believe with proper training, families can become wonderful restorers. We want people to help restore children. So I think if there's something in you that's being tugged at in any capacity, we're always looking for respite providers, babysitters. I have
Yeah, even really super short term.
yes,
Just overnight
2 days,
or whatever. That might be a way to kind of get
An
into it.
afternoon, absolutely. Just
Yeah.
step into the stream, and most people who take that first step end up falling in love with it because our
Yeah.
kids are so amazing and they're just kids. I think sometimes people think of foster kids as another entity, like they're
Right.
another thing. They're just
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
They're just
have a
kids.
third eye or something.
Yeah, like they
They're
absolutely,
just,
they like reading
they're just
American Girl
children.
doll books. They
Yeah.
like playing football outside. They
Yeah.
want a mom. They want a dad. And sometimes they'll even ask to call their foster parents, even if they know it's temporary. They're so hungry for love and for parents. So
And they're going to respond to that.
they do. Kids sense when someone is safe and they may test your limits at times, just as all children do, but these kids need love. They need support. They need boundaries. They need someone who's
Well,
not
and
walking away.
they need a stable family dynamic to be modeled
Yes, ma'am.
for them because chances are they didn't have that.
Yes, and some of our biological parents are really wonderful people who had some hard things happen to them.
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes they're not, sometimes
Yeah,
just like all
sometimes
parents.
they're
sometimes
just
we have
damaged people.
Absolutely. And then we sometimes see biological parents working so hard to get our kids back, and we'll see
Yeah.
our foster families walk alongside the
That's
bio
so
parents.
good. That is so good.
Yeah, where it's such a selfless thing because they're not, even if they're hoping to adopt that child,
Right.
which does sometimes happen, but even if they're hoping to adopt that child, allowing the biological parent.
To still be a part of their life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, that is just awesome. Well, I like to end these visits with a little questionnaire, similar to the
Yes.
one the late great James Lipton would use on Inside the Actor's Studio. This is my take on it. So we'll start. What is your favorite word?
My favorite word is patisserie.
What?
My favorite word is patisserie.
Patisserie. You're gonna have to tell.
it's
That's
like
a new one for me.
Where they make pastries.
Oh, oh yes.
And I'll tell
I've
you,
seen patisserie.
I thought about that word. I was in the Middle East at the time, and I was in a really lovely bakery, and I was like, what is my favorite word? And I saw it on the wall, and I was like, I think that might be
I
it.
think that might be
Patisserie.
Well, that's a first for this show. I'll tell you for sure.
I love that I had an answer like that.
I know. Really, I said, did you know I was going to do this?
I have
Okay,
a degree in writing.
So, what's your least favorite word?
My least favorite word? Oh, anything that's like gross humor. Just,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Okay. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
I try to paint every day.
Do you?
And I try to play my piano every day.
Good.
And when I do that, I feel so much closer to God, and I feel like I understand myself more afterwards.
Yeah. Those creative outlets are so important. Well, what turns you off creatively or spiritually or emotionally?
Being boxed in. If I feel like someone has an idea of who I am that isn't accurate, or if they want to cap me creatively, it makes me feel unconnected, disconnected.
Yeah, 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 good. What sound do you love the most?
Oh man, what sound? I love, this is not very, special, but I love going to sleep with rain and thunder
Oh gosh. And in Texas, it's such a rarity.
or the sound of the
We love
ocean.
to hear it.
I
Yeah,
love
I hear
water,
that from a lot of people. Yeah, or babbling brooks, something to do with water.
any type of
I guess
water.
that's why those white sound machines and stuff often
I
have
have one
a
in my
setting on
room.
that. Yeah, that's well, what sound do you hate?
Oh, I hate like when the trash truck is coming down the street and it's like really a lot of metal clanging and
Oh
then our
yeah.
dog starts going crazy. It's so much
Yeah, I
stimulation
mean
for my
I'm hearing
brain.
it in my head right now
No, I'm
as
just
you
like,
speak.
everyone, please stop.
Okay, well that's interesting. Oh, okay, what other profession would you like to have tried? I mean, you thought briefly about television news, but
Well, when I was 18, I wanted to do musical theater. Was my hope.
yeah. Okay, so you're a singer too.
I am. I have some pretty bad jaw issues now, so it's harder for me to do. But for a while there, my dream was to be
Yeah.
on Broadway. What can I say?
Oh, how wonderful. You have a favorite show?
I probably Les Mis. I'm
Oh,
not
yeah.
very unique with that, but I like Hamilton. I like most shows, to be honest with you. The
Yeah,
Lion
yeah,
King makes me cry when I
yeah,
see it live.
yeah, yeah. What job do you know you would not want to do though? No matter what.
Oh man. Um, I wouldn't want to do anything at night. I don't like night. I wouldn't want to do an overnight job.
Yeah.
So
Need your beauty rest, huh?
yeah, I love sleeping.
Yeah.
So probably I'll say someone who works a desk job overnight, that would probably be my nightmare. Sitting still is not something I'm great
Right,
at. So
right.
sitting still and being awake at 3 a.m, no go.
Yeah. Okay, I can go along with that. Okay, final question. What do you want to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Oh, you loved my family well. That's my heart, is to love family, to help create families, and to have a family of my own. And I would love to hear him acknowledge that.
Well, from what I can tell you, that's what you're doing.
Oh, thank
So I
you.
appreciate you so much, Hope. How can people get more information about Arrow Child and Family Ministries?
Yes, so we're www.arrow.org. You can find us on Instagram, Arrow Child and Family Ministries. We're on Facebook. You can look up my public Facebook page is just Hope, as in I hope it happens,
Yeah.
Middlebrook.
Yeah.
And I'm in a pink sweater. That's my Facebook
Okay,
page if you
I'll
want to
have
follow
to
along.
get on there and like. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yay.
for sure.
So follow along.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and we'll put links, in the header for the podcast so folks can
Wonderful.
go on because I know there's some wonderful stories that people
Mhm.
can read and learn more if they just a little bit of inkling that you might want to
Yes.
do some foster parenting.
Oh yeah, and I mean seriously, just a coffee. Let's just pop on over to Dichotomy or Biddy and Bose and just have a moment and just chat about what your fears are, your excitements, and whether this might be something that you could do.
So a great need, and it's going to be even greater
Yes,
in
ma'am.
the coming weeks. So I appreciate you so much, Hope,
Thank you
for
so
sharing with
much.
us.
Such a pleasure.
And thank you for being with us for Central Texas Life. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Central Texas Life with Ann Harder is part of the Rogue Media family. Be sure to check out our other shows at roguemedianetwork.com. Please rate this show 5 stars on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get your podcasts. Join us again soon for more Central Texas Life with Ann Harder.